Hello EU4 players, my name is AlzaboHD, and in today's video, we're going to cover how to form and play the Kingdom of Jerusalem in EU4. This Crusader state has been recently updated and features a unique mission tree, events, and more that make them a promising pick for your next campaign. While forming Jerusalem makes for a difficult challenge, this step-by-step strategy guide will lead you to victory and unlock a plethora of Iron Man achievements along your way into the Holy Land. Deus Vult, it's time we get started. Before we begin, it's important to note that Jerusalem can be formed by 6 distinct European nations. Provence, Cyprus, Athens, Naxos, Epirus, and the Knights can form the state directly, while all other Christian nations are only able to release the country via decision. Of particular note are Provence and the Knights, 2 nations that are well suited to crusading the Levantine Crescent. Provence starts with the most development, boasts a personal union, and benefits from powerful missions, while the Knights are well positioned in the eastern Mediterranean and have the ability to raid ports for buckets of ducats. Both Provence and the Knights offer Iron Man player achievements during their campaign, and, while Provence is more powerful, we will be playing as the Knights for the purposes of this guide. After selecting the Knights and starting an Iron Man campaign, we will begin by building a spy network in Byzantium and constructing 2 cog transport ships in our capital. Before unpausing the game, we will also improve our relations with Venice. At this point, you should unpause the game and use your ships to raid the coastline of Asia Minor and North Africa. Every 10 years, you can and should use this mechanic, which will grant your impoverished island state hundreds of ducats and allow you to fund your forces and refinance your loans. Moving ahead, once your spy network in Byzantium reaches 20, it's time to fabricate a claim on Morea or any of their other provinces. Now pull back your diplomat and begin fabricating a claim on the island of Cyprus to your east, while continuing to improve relations with Venice and, later, the Papal States. Your 2 cog transport ships are almost finished, and once they arrive, you'll be at naval force limit, upon which we will hire an admiral. This will let us complete the Crusader Fleet mission, which grants us claims across the Middle East and improves our naval combat ability. With our initial setup out of the way, it's time to turn our attention to Byzantium. It won't take long until they are at war with Epirus, or are otherwise weak or diplomatically isolated, at which point we will strike. In our example here, they only have Serbia as an ally, who will not defend them. With our troops and navy at full maintenance, it's time to declare war on Byzantium for our claims in Morea, and move to the next step of our guide. We will start off our war with Byzantium by loading up our troops into our transport ships and sailing into the Bosphorus. Our first plan of action will be to take out the Byzantine armies in their capital, and sit on Constantinople to prevent the Ottomans from taking it. You only need a token regiment of 1,000 men on the province to prevent Turkish intervention, and, once secured, go ahead and ferry the rest of your men to southern Greece and pick off the war goal. While you can take Byzantium's Greek provinces with your armies, you'll need to have at least 9,000 men to siege Constantinople. To this end, you'll have to recruit heavily over your force limit, and, much like contemporary Greece, become functionally bankrupt. Luckily for you, loans are only a number, and we can raid to repay our loans anyways, so go ahead and borrow as much as you need to ensure Constantinople falls to your Catholic crusaders. If all goes to plan, you'll have Constantinople in your control in a matter of months, and can push for peace. In the peace deal, you can opt to either annex Byzantium directly or subjugate them as a vassal state. Personally, I'd strongly recommend vassalizing them, as Byzantium owns a large amount of cores across the Balkans and benefits from powerful missions you can access as their overlord. Just to be safe though, I'd also recommend taking a province or 2 from them in the peace deal to maintain your relative power over them. Once you are at peace, be sure to improve relations with your new subject to prevent open rebellion. Constantinople is now in the clutch of our Catholic crusaders, and it's time to focus our attention on the eastern Mediterranean. For us to build our power base and retake the Holy Land, we will need more cores and clay. Athens, Epirus, Cyrus, and the Genoan Islands are perfect targets. Go ahead and fabricate claims on these Greek and Eastern Mediterranean island territories, and check their alliance networks to select a weak enough victim for your next conquest. In our case, Cyprus is allied to Athens, and we can declare an indirect war to take the island and avoid the guarantee that the Mamluks place on the island. With numerical superiority, you'll have the upper hand, and when you occupy whichever territory you've targeted, go ahead and annex the land, which you will later core and convert. And speaking of conversion, all of your lands are wrong culture and wrong religion, so I'd recommend promoting Greek as an accepted culture, or even making it your primary culture to avoid unrest. Converting your Orthodox territories to Catholicism will be more of a hassle, and will require you to enact the enforced unity of faith privilege in the clergy estate menu, which will grant you a massive plus 1% to missionary strength. But converting your territories costs money, which is in short supply in your island nation. To make ends meet and pay off your loans, you should continue raiding your coastal neighbors with your navy, which allows you to gain a few hundred extra ducats every 10 years, and further grants you more sailors for your growing fleet. Between conquests of the Mediterranean territories, it's also important to improve relations with the Papal States, and ally them if possible, which will unlock the Sway the Pope mission. This will grant you further claims across Lower Greece, which you can then use to declare war on Epirus and consolidate your foothold in Europe. Epirus and Genoa should be your next targets, and often ally each other, allowing you to conquer the Genoan islands and feed your Byzantium vassal with their Greek cores. With your new holdings in Greece conquered and cored, go ahead and complete the Foothold in Greece mission, which will grant you even more free claims, including Ottoman territory and Asia Minor. Before long, you'll reach Admin Tech 5, at which point you can choose your first national idea. I strongly recommend picking the religious idea group for your campaign, as you'll be spending the next few centuries conquering and converting infidel lands, making the missionary strength bonuses invaluable. After you absorb your southern Greek and Mediterranean neighbors, you should now focus on improving relations with the strong European powers to your west and north. An alliance with Poland is ideal, and will allow you to expand into the Ottomans with relative ease. If you haven't already allied Venice, you should now consider doing so. Other valuable allies include Serbia, Hungary, and the Mamluks if they are available to you. We're going to need all of the help we can get, as we will now turn our focus to the east and target the Ottoman Turks. Once the Ottomans declare war on a neighbor, or are otherwise distracted, it's time to proceed to the next step of our guide. But before we secure the Mediterranean, it's important to also secure your digital identity from foreign claims with Surfshark, the sponsor of today's video. When you surf the internet, you are exposed to a plethora of foreign spy networks and targeted ads, but luckily there is a solution. Using the Surfshark VPN, or Virtual Private Network, you can secure your identity and prevent data brokers from harvesting and reselling your information. But one of my favorite features of Surfshark is that you can use the program to see content not available in your area. Personally, I'm an American that lives in France, and often missed out on Netflix shows from home due to my foreign IP address. With Surfshark enabled, I can easily swap my IP and unlock shows like The Twilight Zone that are normally blocked in my region. To support AlzaboHD and protect your digital identity, you can get Surfshark VPN at the link below, and enter promo code ALZABO for 83% off and 3 extra months for free. Surfshark offers a full 30-day money-back guarantee, and I'd like to thank them again for supporting the channel. Once our allies are in place and the Turks are distracted, it's time to declare war on the Ottomans to restore Byzantium's cores in Greece. If necessary, go ahead and promise your allies territory so that they join the war. More likely than not, the Ottomans will be busy fighting in Asia Minor, which leaves their European and Balkan territory ripe for the taking. Your first focus should be to take their capital in Edirne, while your allies do the heavy lifting. You can also use your navy to blockade the Bosphorus once you control Gallipoli. With the help of your allies, your forces should soon come on top of the Ottomans, who will start to bleed manpower in their multi-front wars. If possible, go ahead and carpet siege any territory not covered by Turkish forts, and let your allies fight the Ottomans so that you can preserve your manpower. After some time, you'll reach a near maximum war score, and it's time to make peace. But before you get greedy, don't forget to give your allies a few provinces if you've promised them territories. The rest of the war score should be spent on restoring Byzantium's coastal cores, which will make future Ottoman wars far easier. I'd also recommend taking 1 or 2 Ottoman provinces directly in Asia Minor. With peace now on the horizon, go ahead and core and convert your territories, pay off any of your existing loans, and continue improving relations with neighboring states to reduce your aggressive expansion. Our time of peace will also allow us to catch up in technology and embrace the Renaissance if we haven't already obtained it. Before long, we'll be able to select our second national idea group. I'd personally recommend a military idea group like offensive or defensive, which will greatly augment and improve the abilities of our armies. While waiting for our truce with the Turks, it's also important to keep an eye out for the Egyptian Mamluks to our southeast. They alone possess the territory needed to form Jerusalem, but are often too powerful to take on alone. Once they are distracted in a war or are diplomatically isolated, check and see if Venice or any of your other allies will join you for a potential invasion. If so, forget about the Turks, and declare war on the Mamluks for your claims in the Levant. God wills that it's time for us to retake the Holy Land in the name of Christendom, Deus Vult. Unlike our previous war, it is likely that we will be outnumbered in our first war against the Saracen Egyptians. It is for this reason that naval power is paramount, and, speaking of boats, you should use your cogs to load up your men and disembark them directly into the Holy Land. Your first priority will be your war goal, in this case the province of Gaza, but you can't rely on the AI to save you if you find yourself cut off. It is for this reason that you should always keep your regiments close to the coast and reinforced. In a worst-case scenario, you can always pull a Dunkirk and evacuate them out of port if the Mamluks charge you with a death stack. Once the war goal is secure, your next priority will be to take the Egyptian capital of Cairo. If Venice or your allies still haven't arrived yet, you shouldn't panic, but should instead take out a few loans and hire mercenaries as needed. You'll have to play more conservatively if your allies are far away, and you should avoid any conflicts in non-favorable terrain. In fact, there are multiple mountains around Jerusalem that make for excellent AI traps if you find yourself in a pinch, and you can always press for an early peace if things are going poorly. On the topic of peace, eventually you or the Egyptians will hit a wall and will be forced to the negotiating table. You should have enough war score to take at least the required provinces of Gaza, Jaffa, and Jerusalem, which will allow you to form the Kingdom of Jerusalem. If you have extra war score, I'd highly recommend taking at least 1 Syrian province. Much like Byzantium, you can later release Syria as a vassal to feed back their cores. The day after peace is signed, you'll be able to complete the Jerusalem mission, which will grant you +1 stability and massive amounts of prestige and papal influence. If you are able to take a Syrian province, you should also release Syria as a vassal and improve relations to make them loyal. With your second diplomat, you should begin diplomatically integrating Byzantium. After a year or 2, everything should be cored, at which point you can make Palestine into a state. We can now form the Kingdom of Jerusalem, but I'd recommend that you raid the coastline beforehand, as you'll lose the ability to raid coasts if you opt for Jerusalem's national ideas. With the Holy Land restored, Jerusalem formed, and your kingdom on the rise, it's time now to refocus our attention on the Ottomans to our north. When it's possible to declare war on them on favorable terms, call on any willing allies or promise them land. It's time for Ottoman War II, Anatolia Boogaloo. By this point in the campaign, it is likely that the Ottomans have made a few friends and allies of their own. For your first goal in this conflict, I'd recommend focusing on invading any co-belligerent that joins their call to war and applying maximum pressure to get them to separate peace. You can take all of their money, force them to annul their treaties with the Ottomans, and eliminate the threat of a multi-front war before later focusing your effort on taking the Turkish capital. Once you and your allies are able to make peace with any remaining co-belligerents, go ahead and send your men back into Greece to take the Ottoman capital. You should now outnumber the Ottomans, and your fleet will be able to blockade the Bosphorus. Once you stack wipe their armies once or twice, you should push into Anatolia and maximize your war score by carpet sieging any remaining unoccupied provinces. When it's time to push for peace, be sure to grant your ally any land you've promised them to maintain the alliance. With all of the remaining war score, you can feed back Byzantium their Greek cores, and take more Anatolian land for yourself. Once peace is signed with the Ottomans, our truce with the Mamluks will likely be expired, and you know what that means. Peace is for the weak, and Christianity must be spread by the sword. It's time now to declare war on the Mamluks for your Syrian subjects' cores and call in any willing allies. For our second war with Egypt, it's important to have your military in Jerusalem before the war starts, as your capital has moved here and is highly vulnerable to the surrounding Mamluk state. You should also ensure that you keep your mercenary units from before, and consider hiring more if your economy permits it, as the Mamluks will outnumber you until your allies can join the conflict. Use the mountainous terrain of your home region to your advantage, and pick off any isolated regiments the AI throws into your territory. Eventually, you'll be able to defend or retake your capital, and drive out the enemy from your immediate borders. At this point, you should carpet siege Syria with a regiment or two, and use your main force and mercenaries to launch an attack on their capital of Cairo. You can use your cannons to order a barrage on the city to take it faster, but after a while, the city will fall into your hands anyways. At this point, you should make peace with any co-belligerents that remain in the conflict, and then press for peace with the Mamluk state. In this peace, you should take your cores along the Syrian coast, and feed your Syrian vassal their own cores in an effort to get them to border another nation that possesses Syrian cores, like Akkayanu. As your campaign progresses, there are several short and long-term goals I'd recommend that you pursue to maximize your probabilities of success. The first goal will be to ally Aragon if you haven't done so already, which unlocks a mission that grants you a core and control of the island of Malta. The second goal I'd recommend is breaking your alliance with Venice and annexing their Mediterranean territories. And speaking of territories, your Syrian subject state has a massive amount of cores, and you should declare war on Akkayanu and the other Turkish miners to reclaim this land, which can later be reintegrated into your state diplomatically. And on the topic of integration, once Byzantium has been absorbed, you should consider moving your trade capital to Constantinople to greatly increase your trade income. This income can further be increased by farming the Turks in Anatolia between truce timers, absorbing more land into your nation and increasing your trade power in the Constantinople trade node. You can also obtain land that allows you to connect your European empire with your Asian capital, forming a land bridge through Anatolia and Syria. Moving forwards, you'll eventually work your way up to the fifth government reform, which presents your nation with an important choice. Here you can decide to remain a monastic order or opt to change government forms into a republic or a monarchy. While monastic orders are interesting and the new reforms allow you to brew beer and grant you fantastic casus bellis, I'd strongly recommend that you reform into a monarchy. In the short term, you'll lose 3 levels of government reforms, which is unfortunate, but in the long term, you'll have access to royal marriages and personal unions. Personally, I'm a huge fan of PU potential, and was able to PU both Austria and Hungary shortly after reforming my government. Before we conclude the video, I'd like to quickly overview the progress of my ongoing Jerusalem campaign. I've opted to select religious, offensive, exploration, and quantity ideas, though if you aren't interested in colonialism, you can swap exploration for either trade, diplomatic, or influence idea groups. In terms of subject states, I've integrated Byzantium and Syria, and am in the process of feeding my Catholic Tunisian vassal, which controls almost all of North Africa. I also have colonies throughout Oceania, Africa, and the newly founded colonial nation of New Jerusalem in Florida. The Middle East is halfway through its Catholic conversion, and the capital crown lands of Palestine and Jerusalem are completely Greek in terms of culture. In 1586, Jerusalem is the strongest nation in the world, and, in time, will go on to cross out the crescent and lead the Western world into the early modern period. Before ending the video, I'd like to thank everyone for watching this far and supporting the YouTube algorithm. If you enjoyed the content and want to support the channel, I humbly ask that you fabricate a claim on the like button and enforce a union on the subscription box. More content is coming soon in December, and I apologize for the somewhat large gap between my recent videos. A special thanks as well to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Without further ado, it's time now to roll the credits.